The Rolex Submariner started out with a production quantity of only 2,881 watches. Now, over 50 years later, Rolex produced over 153,000 pieces of that watch in that configuration. And that is over 53 times as much. It is by far the most popular Rolex, perhaps even the most recognized watch in the entire world. But inside the watch bubble, people seem to heavily disagree with this sentiment. So for today's video, we'll find out exactly why the Submariner appears to be stirring the pot more than any other watch and why it is still seen on most people's wrists, regardless of its questionable reputation sometimes. So let's get started. The Submariner had a long time coming and started out as one of the earliest purpose-built dive watches, which is a pretty cool thing to begin with, I think. The very first reference was the 6204, and though it is instantly recognizable as a Submariner, there are still some major differences to the one that is available for purchase today. So let's quickly have a look at the root of this legend to understand the journey it has been on until today. The Submariner started out with its guaranteed 100-meter water resistance after Rolex patented their oyster case in the 1920s, the very first waterproof wristwatch. So it seems that in hindsight, it was the only logical next step to release something marketed as a watch for professionals who would require, a higher water resistance, as deep sea diving and water sports and all that kind of stuff. All these water related hobbies became more popular in the 1950s after the war. So therefore, the first sub launched in 1953 with the reference 6204. Like I said, it was a full stainless steel dive watch with a 37mm diameter. Smaller diameter were actually pretty standard back then. If you now, hear the 37 and think, oh my gosh, that's pretty small. It has been a rather, recent trend from the early 2000s that the, watch cases have blown up in size like crazy. But back then, like 37, 36, 38mm was more than enough for a sporty watch. It had a black dial with a mix of stick and round luminous hour markers and a 60-minute unidirectional diving bezel and no crown guards. So all in all, a very sleek but sporty dive watch. Then only a couple of years later, you could already tell that Rolex knew that they had their hands on something truly unique and special, and they further developed the Submariner. The reference 5512 marked an upgrade to a chronometer certified movement. That was the late 1950s. It introduced, crown guards on some variants, even providing better protection for the winding crown and 200-meter water resistance. And I know it might be an old hat or even, a bit corny, but it is pretty obvious how Rolex has always followed the very simple mindset of evolution instead of revolution when it comes to developing their watches. And so step by step, they improved and refined existing features and, tweaked little bits here and there to be able to closely monitor any missteps along the way if they, should occur. So then in the late 1960s, they took a major leap forward, if you ask me, because they introduced their Submariner with a date. And they had their date just, so this wasn't an entirely new concept, having a date on a watch. But it did fuse together to a very iconic Rolex, characteristics. You have this loop on the crystal for the date and, the Submariner itself. The Submariner date would become a staple in Rolex's catalog, distinguishing it from, the no-date models that came before. And I feel like until this day, you're either a ride or die for one or the other. So I would say let me know in the comments which team you're on, if you are the sub-date team or the sub-no-date team. Which one is your favorite and why? Anyways, time went by, and after its appearance in the Bond movies, which solidified the Submariner status as a symbol for professionalism, quality and heritage, the infamous quartz crisis was fast approaching. Sean Connery wore the 6538, the big crown with the 8mm crown and no crown guards in the early Bond movies shortly before everything went down. Rolex updated their sub to a sapphire crystal. They had an acrylic before that with the reference number 800 in 1979. Replacing the acrylic, which further increased its depth rating to 300 meter to the initial 100 it started out with in the 50s, which also introduced, by the way, the quick set date function, so people's fingers could take a break from the endless winding the watch to set the date, which, oh my gosh, it must have been so annoying. But during the so-called quartz crisis, which started in the 70s, really gained traction in the 80s. Quartz technology, mainly pioneered by Seiko in Japan, made watches almost overnight significantly more cheaper than their mechanical counterparts and were more accurate on top of that. Though many traditional Swiss watch brands tried to compete by pivoting away from their mechanical watchmaking, which turned out to be a grave mistake for so many. A significant portion of the Swiss watch industry collapsed or was absorbed by larger conglomerates. That's where the Swatch Group came from. Rolex and the Submariner were inspired either, but they chose a conservative approach to ride it out, though at the time nobody knew what the future was going to bring. And I cannot imagine the pressure they had to endure throughout those years to, kind of remain afloat while seeing other big brands collapsing and all this influx of quartz watches. So yeah, though Rolex recognized the huge threat of quartz watches, they stuck to their mechanical roots, but not without trying to develop some quartz movements of their own on the way, which resulted in the oyster quartz, for example, the oyster quartz Datejusts and Day-Dates, but that wasn't incorporated into their Submariners. The Submariner, kind of being one of Rolex's large, like the flagship professional model, remained mechanical. This was part of the brand's, strategy to preserve its identity and the aura of prestige around its professional tool watches. So they kind of had these two streams. Like I said, they continued to refine the mechanical watches with the sapphire crystal and the quick set date function and all of that, but also, dabbled in quartz, I guess. And then by the late 1980s and 1990s, mechanical watches rebounded in popularity, yay, as symbols of luxury and heritage. Rolex's brand strength and the Submariner's timeless design really fueled an even greater demand for these types of watches. You've had these vintage collectors which began seeking out the older references by now, because at that time it was almost 50 years. And then that was driving up the Submariner's secondary market values and generating renewed interest in its evolving design nuances. And then in the 90s and noughties, the Submariner saw more refinements, further hammering down on the fact that Rolex is pretty happy with how the sub looks like, only changing the watch in very incremental, teeny tiny steps. 3135 movement, known for its robustness and ease of servicing, powered the sub before getting changed out for the update. So that is a long time. They were apparently very happy with that. And that time also saw the introduction of Super Luminova to improve the legibility in low light situations. So you've had these very small but genius steps to just further improve a very great watch to begin with. And then you also had the introduction of the Kermit. It was the 16610LV for Lunette Verte with the green alu bezel insert, and the maxi dial with the notch hour markers, which people are obsessed with until this day. This was the 50th anniversary model. And then within the past decade, we have 2025 by now, we also had the update to the super case with the 116-610 and the introduction of the ceramic bezel, which is really nice. So you have a more durable bezel instead of the alu. And the latest generation of Submariner watches was just born in 2020, so 5 years ago. It caused quite disturbance. Rolex did the slide case redesign in 2020 with refining the lug shape a bit to be a bit more tapered down, going from an already kind of large 40mm diameter case to a 41, though the kind of wrist presence remained largely the same. So it wasn't this big of a change in terms of the look, but on paper it was a 41mm watch, and people were freaking out about this. I was freaking out about this, I can remember. Can I say that? I think time will tell if this approach turns out to be more of a mistake than a success, but what do you think? Was it a mistake? But yeah, that was what happened. And then there was also the movement update to the 3235 and 3230, depending on if you have a date or no date, with the enhanced power reserve that is now at 70 hours, and the update to the chronology escapement. And of course, the bracelet and clasp underwent lots of changes too. You started out with these very flimsy metal clasps in the early 50s, and now you have the glide lock clasp for micro adjustments without needing any tools, and the overall fact that they changed to more robust 904L steel a long time ago too. So for today, the Rolex Submariner stands as one of the most sought after luxury watches in the world. I get at least 10-15 messages per day asking me about whether or not they should buy a Submariner. But it's also the one that, when you're in this wristwatch echo chamber, the one watch that appears to be the most standard when it comes to luxury watches because of that. I know, that the term standard or entry level doesn't sit right with some people because it might hold some, negative connotations to it. But I think it, entry level doesn't equal basic as in boring or bad. Submariner is an amazingly great choice for everyone who's looking for an easy to wear, robust luxury watch that won't go out of fashion in the next 20 or 30 years at least. It is this paradox of something being so popular but looked down upon it at the same time. Kind of a trap which I fall into a lot too, actually, so I'm not exempt from that, obviously. And I don't think I've said this in a video, but I'm pretty sure I've said this in person to some people. I often criticize the Submariner as it being a boring watch. But I think I should appreciate it for its undeniable level of basicness that made it possible for this watch to stay as high in demand as it has been for over 50 years now, which is incredible. It is impressive to say the least, and very respectable. I feel like the Submariner is kind of the Taylor Swift of the watch world of some sort. Because, you know, it is easily adjustable. A lot of people really enjoy that, which doesn't mean it's like dumb or like stupid or simple or whatever. I think creating something wildly popular is probably one of the most difficult things ever. To, you know, hit so many things for so many people. But yeah, you've had the price increase from January 1st, by the way, of this year. The retail prices have now started to catch up to the secondary market prices. And if you wanted to get a Rolex Submariner right now, you could go to the secondary market without paying too much over retail. It's basically almost the same. I think it's like $1,000-ish or euro difference. So that is good news. Sort of. So yeah, all in all, whether you're drawn to its storied history, its legendary performance, or simply its unmistakable look on the wrist, the Rolex Submariner remains in a league of its own. It's an emblem of adventure, sophistication, and still enduring quality. For those fortunate enough to add one to their collection, it is most of the time not just a watch, it's a piece of horological history. It is iconic. You can wear it daily, can wear it day in and day out. Some people even advocate for the Submariner to be worn with a suit. I'm still a bit torn on that one, but you have to decide that for yourself. Yeah, it is a fun and great watch. And on top of that, which is something I just absolutely love about Rolex, if you decide to no longer like it, you can sell it and almost get all of your money back and invest it into a new watch, which is always a great thing if you're in it for collecting things. And here you have it. The reason everybody falls for this watch. Whether you think it is justified or not is up to you, and of course, but I believe there's no way of denying the immense impact this watch, the Submariner, had and still has on the watch industry. It might be basic, but it is damn good. So, what are your thoughts on this? What is the Submariner to you, and what do you think of the person you see wearing one? Let me know in the comments down below what you think, what your perception of that is. And that is all I have for you today. As always, if you have enjoyed this video, make sure to give it a thumbs up. If you want to watch more videos like this one, I recommend subscribing to my channel, and then I will see you in my next one. Bye!